You're listening to Season 2 of Beyond Insights, your go-to podcast for all things accounting, business, and technology.
Unsure how to improve your leadership skills, or whether you're suited to being a leader to begin with? Looking for ways to build a stronger team or take better risks? Then stay tuned.
From cybersecurity, blockchain, and AI innovations to sustainability, employee retention, and work-life balance, we've got you covered.
We speak to knowledgeable and insightful guests from varied backgrounds, industries, and locations from all around the globe.
From this multiplicity of thought, we strive to find solutions to our most urgent business problems.
Whether you're a small business owner, an accountant, entrepreneur, or even a young professional looking to progress, this podcast is for you.
Thank you for tuning in. Let's dive right in and go beyond insights.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to our new episode of Beyond Insights. Today I'm very excited to be joined by Marissa Oerlemans, one of our own. So just to give you a brief introduction, Marissa is one of the senior designers here at Syft. She's been behind some of your favorite features on the feature set. So very recently, the new cash manager was one of Marissa's babies. A bit of a background on her: she initially studied and started working as an accountant, and then transitioned into information design. So we'll get into that in a second. In her free time, Marissa sings in the Amiki and Capital Singers choirs in Pretoria, and she loves spending time with her niece and her beautiful beagle. So Marissa, thank you so much for joining us today. Very excited for the conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So just to give people a bit of background on yourself, let them get to know you a little bit.
Yes.
I think let's start off with a fun fact. So do you want to give the people a fun fact about yourself?
Might be a bit of a silly one, but I still say that rhyme, Billy eats cake and Uncle sells eggs, in my head every time I have to spell the word because.
I love that.
I'm kind of lost without that rhyme, so every time I have to spell it, keep repeating that in my head.
I suspect there's probably a couple people who similarly use that as well.
Same, I also suspect that, 100%.
I definitely do as well. So I'm sure people want to understand what prompted the transition from working as an accountant or following accounting and then moving into design.
Yeah, I guess that's not really a natural progression. So I always really liked accounting as a subject. I really liked the fact that there was structure and there was rules to follow. So as a subject, it was great. But then as soon as I started working in the industry, I just couldn't really see myself doing that for the rest of my life. And all throughout high school and primary school, I used to do art lessons and really enjoyed that. And then after school, I started drawing a lot more and kind of considering getting into a more creative career. And around that time, I heard about the information design degree and applied for it completely on a whim and started studying full-time again in 2019. And this might be a bit of a controversial opinion, but to me, design is actually a really good combination of art and accounting because it's you get to be creative and you get to be artsy, but to a certain extent, there's still a lot of structure and even rules that you have to follow. So it's kind of the best of both.
Love that. No, that's a great answer. And then do you think, if at all, that's impacted the way that you see Syft, for example, or also any other fintech companies or apps?
Just from a design perspective, I definitely say you obviously don't need to have a background in accounting to be a designer at Syft, or I'm guessing most other fintech companies. But for me, I do find having that background and having that context definitely just helps, because I guess it's just kind of easier to put yourself in the user's shoes if you used to be in those shoes yourself. So just for the context, it definitely is very useful.
Cool. And then sort of tying back into the topic of today's conversation, I'm going to reference an article from Figma which says good design isn't just about making things pretty. So I know this is something you're passionate about. So, do you agree with this? And what does good design look like to you?
So I agree with this 100%. And I think the idea that designing is just about making things pretty is one of the biggest misconceptions about design. To me personally, design is more about problem solving than anything else. And as far as good design is concerned, more often than not, good design is actually invisible, meaning that within the context of product design or fintech, good design should make the product seamless or at the very least easy to interact with. So in fintech, products will always have a certain level of complexity. So good design should manage this complexity and kind of mitigate it as far as possible, while still allowing for complex tasks to actually be performed. So it is kind of a tricky balance.
And then sort of thinking about some of the more successful apps, things like Uber, Amazon, DoorDash, what makes them successful from a design perspective?
Well, I think they do what's called user-centric design really well, and that just basically means that you put the user and their needs and what they want or have to accomplish on your app. They put that first. So I think that's what makes them very successful, is they really understand what their users want and what they're trying to accomplish. And also, as those needs change, like the user's needs, they never stop innovating to kind of keep up with that.
Yeah,
like
100%.
Give an example, I had to book an Uber to the airport quite recently, and I don't know how new this feature is. They might have had it for a while, but they now give you the option, when you book the Uber, they give you the option to like select your flight number or tell them your flight number. And then when you do, they tell you what time you need to be picked up so that you'll be at the airport on time. And I was like, I didn't even know that I needed that until I saw it on the app. And I was like, this is actually so great.
Unreal. Unreal. And I think for me personally, that would probably be a super, super useful feature to be included.
Just like the ease of mind, because you're like, okay, all I need to do is just give you my flight number and you're going to tell me what time I need to be picked up by, and I know that I'll be on time. So that definitely is great.
Yeah, 100%. So going back to that article that I mentioned a bit earlier, it also says that design isn't just about aesthetics or functionality, but also about the human aspects and cultivating trust. So I'm interested from your perspective, how can design help, with cultivating trust or anything like this?
Good question. So to me, when they say that design is about the human aspect, that just means basically putting the user first. So while a pretty interface is great and users like looking at it, I think users value a good user experience more than anything else.
Yeah.
So a good user experience just basically shows you that the customer's needs were considered and that they were understood and that the whole process was like thought through properly. And creating a user experience like that just inherently cultivates trust, in my opinion, because it shows that the whole process of creating the product was user-centric and the product wasn't just like built to be able to work. It was actually designed to be like easily understood, easily used, easily navigated by the users. And I think that is obviously a big plus. And in my opinion, design is crucial to creating experiences like this because even just in the sense of like applying best practices, so there's like a sense of familiarity within the product or creating like a clear hierarchy so the navigation is easy, or making the instructions and the like user flow is very clear and easy to understand. Design is pretty much at the forefront of all of that. So I think in terms of that, design is definitely a crucial part of that process.
And it's interesting you say that, because I'm sure lots of people don't even consider that as being like such an important aspect, even though when you go into some of these apps, it's very easy to use. It makes it like very user-centric, like you say. That type of thing doesn't even come into our thinking. So it's interesting that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
And then talking from an accounting perspective, because we did mention that, you started off in accounting and then transitioned over to design.
Yeah.
You'll, be the first to admit that accountants don't spend too much time thinking about design. So, why should they?
Well, I think from a product or software perspective, it is becoming more and more clear to people why design matters and why it's kind of an important part, because it makes it easy to interact with. But I think when it comes to design in general, for example, even just like from a branding perspective, people don't really get why it's that important yet. So a brand, just like short definition, is basically just what distinguishes yourself from your competitors. And it consists of elements like your logo, your typography, your color palette, even like your tone of voice. It's literally like a first impression that you put out there. And I feel like a well-crafted brand can almost immediately give you some measure of like credibility and legitimacy. And this might be a bit of a biased opinion because I am a designer, so obviously how things look is quite important to me. But I feel like personally, if I see a business with like a badly designed website or a logo that doesn't really show any consideration or attention to detail, it does make me wonder if that's kind of the way that they approach other things as well. So I feel like even if it's just on a subconscious level, people do notice when there's like some consideration and attention to detail, and your brand can obviously play a very big role in that. So in my opinion, it is quite important.
No, I completely agree. And I think even not from a designer's perspective. I don't know if I was listening or I read something the other day, but they're speaking about why Apple's so successful, and it's just that sleek design. Like it's very easy to navigate. Like it just builds a sense of trust because, like you say, the idea that everything is so sleek and well put together, in the back of your mind, you might think, okay, cool, this is actually how they run things in their business. So
definitely, like I said, even if it's not something that you consciously think about on a subconscious level, you definitely like pick up on stuff like that. So to me, it's absolutely crucial to have like well-designed products, a well-crafted brand. It just creates a really good first impression. And like you mentioned, it definitely cultivates like a sense of trust.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in terms of design thinking,
yes,
buzzword that I've heard around,
yeah.
How can finance professionals tap into design thinking?
Okay, so just for some context, design thinking basically just means that you solve problems by putting the needs of the users like first and foremost, like above everything else. And obviously it is especially useful in product design because you need to kind of consider your users to cater to them, obviously. There's a lot of ways that this approach can actually benefit finance professionals as well. For example, seeing problems from your user's perspective instead of from your own perspective will just like automatically improve the service that you offer because it's literally going to be tailored to keeping your customers happy. So that's kind of like a clear one, I guess. And then also something that might not be as clear is design thinking is by its nature like a very iterative process, meaning you never just come up with a solution and then basically stop. Yeah. You always kind of improve and you keep innovating based on the feedback that you get. And I feel like that obviously cultivates like a lot of innovation and new ideas and just, it's just really good for like never stagnating and always coming up with new things.
100%. So it's said, by some people, that simplicity in design can be difficult. So especially for things like complex financial matters, obviously we work in financially focused business. And that's why, financial institutions need to find some sort of balance. So making sure their designs are user-friendly, but also they don't minimize the importance or the complexity of the information that's trying to be presented. So from your perspective, with regards to, simplifying it, how can that be done from a business perspective as well?
Yeah, simplicity in design can be very difficult, like especially as you mentioned for like systems and products that actually need to cater for more like complex type of tasks. Yeah. So it is a very tricky balance to kind of find and to manage. And I read an article recently about like simplicity and complexity in design. And there's just like a few things that stood out to me. So firstly, in any system, there will always be an amount of complexity that can't like be reduced, it can't be eliminated, it can't be taken away. So then it becomes like the issue isn't really eliminating the complexity, it's more about who has to deal with it and when. So I feel like it'll either be the designers and the developers when it comes to the product development phase, or it's going to be the users when it comes to actually interacting with the product, which you obviously don't want. Yeah. So I feel like we always try to deal with as much of that complexity during like the development process and the design process, obviously. So even if it's just about like making very deliberate decisions about like where you put certain elements, what do you want to emphasize, what do you want to de-emphasize, or even like how you phrase certain things, like the prompts that you use and like what guidance you provide, because even if the task that they're trying to accomplish isn't necessarily simple, you obviously still want the interaction with the actual product to be as simple and as easy as possible. So that was the one thing, just like basically making the decision of who you want to deal with that complexity. So will it be the designers and the developers, or will it have to be the users when you've actually created the product? And then this is something that really like stuck out to me because I think it's such an easy thing to just kind of glance over or not realize necessarily, is there is a difference between perceived simplicity, so like how simple something looks, and operational simplicity, so how simple it actually is to use it. Okay. And very often when you try to reduce the one, you actually wind up increasing the other. So for example, if you look at an interface and there's like a lot of controls and a lot of selectors and input fields and options, it might look overwhelming to begin with because there's like a lot of information to deal with and a lot to take in. But then once you actually start doing the task that you want to do, it's actually quite simple because there's like the options are clear, the inputs are clear, you kind of know what to do. Whereas if you try and reduce certain like options or selectors or functionalities just to make it look simpler, accomplishing or completing the task actually becomes a little bit harder. So it is like a fine balance to kind of maintain. But I feel like for us, operational simplicity is still the goal. So while we never want to overwhelm users with like too many options or too many selectors or too much information, we do kind of want to give them enough options or like enough flexibility so that using the product actually isn't as hard. So yeah, always to kind of keep operational simplicity as the goal instead of just like the perceived simplicity, basically. And then lastly, I feel like since there's always going to be like some level of complexity within a system, you can always just make sure to have good guidance in place. So that basically entails tooltips with like helpful information, clear help articles, and also like a good support system, which I feel like at Syft we do
100%.
really well. I feel like just offering customers a place where they can go if they really get stuck and they really don't understand something. That's also like really important, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the design, in my opinion.
So super important to have a good relationship between product and design for that.
Definitely, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I mean, that was super interesting. I really enjoyed that conversation. I think we always end off of these podcasts with a couple of rapid fire questions.
Okay.
So the first one is, what is one piece of software outside of Syft
Of course.
that you couldn't live without?
Oh, I'd have to say Figma. Like, I don't think there's been a single day in the past, like 2.5 years that I've been with Syft that I haven't been on Figma. It's, absolutely crucial. And also, the accountant in me still kind of wants to say Excel, even though I don't use it as often as I used to. Just such a great piece of software. So that would have to be my top 2 picks.
I mean, I know rapid fire, but just very quickly, able to sort of explain to me, who's a non-designer, what Figma is?
So, that's feels like a loaded question, because Figma is,
it's
it
a
can
lot.
do so much. It's a lot. But basically, it's just like, it's the software we use to create and design the software, essentially. So probably not the best explanation, but just a piece of software that like specifically caters to wireframing and setting up like mock-ups for your software, essentially. So in a nutshell, I guess that's it.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll definitely have to read up a bit more about Figma as well.
Based on the explanation I just gave you, it feels like I might have to too. It's just like, I feel like it's such a massive system and you can do so much with it. But it's almost, think about it as like where you use like the Adobe suite to create like logos or to Photoshop. Figma is basically geared towards product design. So you can so you can create like your wireframing for apps or for products or whatever you need. Figma is like specifically geared towards catering to that.
Okay, cool. And then what's the best book that you've read recently?
Ooh.
I'm actually interested in this as well.
Yeah, so it's it would have to be Anxious People by Fredrik Backman.
Okay.
He's one of my favorite authors. Like his books are always kind of, it's just, he has such a great like writing style and sense of humor. So it is a fictional, like a work of fiction, I think you call it. But really enjoyed that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, definitely going to add that to the list as well.
Oh yeah, you have to. It's such a great book.
So onto the design side of things. So what's the most valuable lesson you've learned about designing software?
I think it would have to be that there's no like one size fits all solution. So don't get me wrong, like best practices are there for a reason, and I feel like consistency is obviously crucial to creating like a really good user experience. But sometimes you do need to kind of almost want to say deviate and just like come up with something different, or like a different solution or a different approach that's going to be like best suited to what the customers need from that particular like product or feature. So it's kind of like you don't want to reinvent the wheel and come up with stuff that no one's going to know how to use or no one's going to be familiar with. But sometimes you do kind of need to just push the boundaries and come up with what's going to be the best solution for this particular problem. I would have to say that's probably the main thing.
I love that. And then just in keeping with that, what's one thing you'd like listeners to take away from our episode today?
So I think I'd have to say, just like to summarize, very short, design matters, basically. So making things look pretty and making it look good is actually such a small part of design, because I feel like every brief a designer gets or every product you need to design is essentially a problem to be solved. And I feel like something that's especially tricky and kind of like just inherent to design is that no one of these problems ever have like just one clear solution. So I feel like before you can even make anything look pretty, it's about coming up with like the best possible solution to each one of those problems. That would have to be it.
Love that. And I think that's probably a good place for us to end. So Marissa, thank you so much for joining us today. I really hope that people take away quite a bit from what you've had to say. Really, really interesting journey. And just thank you again for joining us and for everything you do.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond Insights podcast.
Please like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to right now.
And please share with any of your colleagues or friends or family members that you think might benefit from listening to this podcast.
That's all from us. Until next time, See you then.